My name's Ethan. I'm 27 years old. And I never thought I'd be the kind of person writing something like this. For most of my life, I was the quiet one in my family. The one who went along with things. The one who didn't argue too much. The one who kept his head down. My parents always had strong personalities. They liked control. They liked being right. And my older brother, Daniel, thrived under their attention. He was loud, confident, demanding. He soaked up the spotlight like it was built for him. And my parents adored him for it. I, on the other hand, learned early that it was easier to stay in the background. If Daniel wanted something, he got it. If I wanted something, I had to wait. If he failed, they called him ambitious. If I struggled, they called me careless. That dynamic carried through my entire childhood. Into high school. Into college. Even into adulthood. I wasn't mistreated outright. Not physically. Not in any way you could point to and call abuse. But I always felt like I didn't quite measure up. Like I was just tolerated. Like I was the spare tire in a family car that only had room for 3. The only person who ever made me feel truly seen was my uncle. My dad's younger brother. Uncle Mark. He was different. Laid back. Funny. And somehow he always knew exactly when I needed someone to talk to. He lived out by the coast. In this gorgeous old beach house. The kind of place people put on postcards. Wide porch. Faded blue shutters. A deck that looked straight out over the water. And inside, walls covered in photographs of surf trips, guitars, and books stacked everywhere. As a kid, summers at that house were the highlight of my year. While my parents were too busy with work. Or focused on Daniel's achievements. Uncle Mark would take me fishing. He'd teach me how to surf. He'd sit with me on the deck while the sun went down, talking about life. He never made me feel small. Never made me feel like an afterthought. Even when I grew older, we stayed close. When I went through college. When I worked odd jobs. When I struggled to figure out my place in the world. He never judged me. He never compared me to Daniel. He believed in me in a way my parents never did. So when he passed away suddenly, it hit me harder than I expected. It felt like losing the one person in my family who had ever been firmly in my corner. The grief was heavy. But what came next was heavier. At the reading of his will, it turned out that Uncle Mark had left me his beach house. Not my parents. Not Daniel. A property valued at over $1 million. For the first time in my life, I had something. Something that was mine. Not because I fought for it. Not because I begged. But because someone I loved trusted me enough to give it. My parents' reaction at that meeting should have been a warning. They smiled in front of the lawyer. They congratulated me. But there was this flicker in their eyes. Something sharp. Something calculating. Like they were already figuring out how to make it theirs. I brushed it off. Told myself I was imagining things. That they were just surprised. But that uneasy feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. A few days later, my mom called me. She used that overly sweet tone she always used when she wanted something. "Have you thought about what you're going to do with the house?" she asked. I told her honestly that I wasn't sure yet. That I wanted time. That I needed to decide. She said things like, "Well, houses like that are hard to manage. And, wouldn't it be better to let us handle it for you?" I laughed it off. But when I hung up, my stomach twisted. That was the first real hint. The first sign that they weren't going to let this go. I tried to push it to the back of my mind. But something in me whispered, "Be careful." Uncle Mark hadn't just left me a house. He'd left me something that could change my life. And I wasn't about to let anyone take it away. Then, a week later, they showed up at the beach house. Not to visit. Not to reminisce. They walked in with smug looks on their faces. My dad carrying a folder. My mom grinning like she'd just won a prize. That's when my dad said the words that made my blood run cold. "We had the deed transferred. You're out by Friday." I just sat there. Stunned. Frozen. The confidence in their voices was terrifying. The certainty. The way they looked at me like I was a child. Like I had no say. For a moment it was like I was 10 years old again. Being told what to do. Having no choice. But this time, I wasn't 10. I was 27. And something inside me snapped. I didn't argue right then. I didn't shout. I didn't plead. I just smiled. A small, quiet smile. And for the first time in my life, they didn't seem so sure of themselves. My dad had this whole speech lined up. I could see it in the way he straightened his shoulders, waiting for me to protest. My mom tilted her head like she was about to start lecturing. But I didn't say a word. I leaned back in my chair. Folded my arms. And smiled again. "Ethan," my dad finally said, impatience breaking through his calm. "This is what's best for the family. You don't know the first thing about maintaining property like this. Insurance. Taxes. Renovations. It's complicated." My mom chimed in. "We already started the paperwork. Buyers are lined up. You'll get something out of it too." The way she said it, like tossing scraps to a dog, made my chest burn. But I forced myself to keep my voice steady. "I'll think about it," I said. Then I stood up and walked them to the door. Mom touched my arm as she passed. She gave me that fake sweet smile again. "Don't take this the wrong way, honey. It's not that we don't trust you. It's just, you've never been responsible with big things. Remember when you sold your old car for half of what it was worth? Or when you dropped out of grad school? This is too important for you to mess up." Every word was a reminder of how they'd kept a mental scoreboard of my so-called failures. Never mind that I'd been working 2 jobs to keep myself afloat. Never mind that they had bailed Daniel out of his 5th failed business venture without a second thought. When they finally left, their words lingered like poison. For years, I believed those criticisms. Believed maybe they were right. Maybe I really was the failure. But standing in that beach house, surrounded by Uncle Mark's photographs and surfboards, I realized how wrong they were. I wasn't incompetent. I just had never been trusted with anything of real value before. And now I had something that mattered. The next week was tense. They called every other day with new suggestions. My dad sent me links to real estate agents. Mom dropped by with grocery bags, pretending she was just being helpful. Slipping in lines like, "It's such a big place for one person, don't you think?" Even Daniel called me. Something he hadn't done in months. "Mom and Dad told me about the house," he said. "You know, if you're overwhelmed, I can take it off your hands. I'll even let you stay in the guest room if you want." I laughed bitterly after that call. He said it like he was doing me a favor. The same brother they bought a new car for while telling me there wasn't money to help with my rent during college. The same brother who got a loan from them to start a bar that failed within a year. But who they still called ambitious. While I was directionless. The favoritism was so blatant it hurt. Every time I replayed their words, I sank deeper into anger. And determination. Uncle Mark had chosen me. Not them. He saw something in me they never bothered to see. And I wasn't about to let them rewrite his decision. But the more I pushed back politely, the more aggressive they became. One evening, they showed up unannounced again. I was on the porch watching the waves. Their car pulled up. My dad marched up the steps, holding a folder stuffed with papers. "Ethan," he said firmly. "We've been patient. We already filed the transfer. You're out by Friday. This is happening. Don't embarrass yourself fighting it." My mom stood behind him. Arms crossed. Smirk curling on her lips. "It's for your own good, sweetheart. We're saving you from a huge mistake." That was my breaking point. They weren't just trying to take the house. They were trying to make me believe I couldn't handle it. The same way they always had. I clenched my fists. But instead of yelling, I breathed. I opened the screen door. Looked them both in the eye. And said simply, "We'll see." Then I shut the door. Inside, my heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting. I was planning. They thought I'd roll over. They thought I'd fold like always. But they didn't know that a week earlier, I had already moved the house into a trust. With Uncle Mark's lawyer helping me set it up. The deed wasn't even in my name anymore. They had no idea the storm that was coming. And part 1 ends there. I came back from the grocery store one afternoon and noticed something was off. The keys in my hand didn't fit into the front door anymore. For a second, I thought I was losing my mind, that maybe I had grabbed the wrong key. But no matter how many times I twisted, jiggled, or shoved, the lock refused to turn. My groceries slipped from my arms and spilled across the porch, apples rolling, milk carton tipping over. That's when I saw it. A note taped neatly to the door. "Ethan, this is for your own good. We'll talk soon. Dad." My stomach dropped. They had changed the locks on my house. The house Uncle Rob left to me. The house they had no legal right to touch. I sat down on the porch steps, staring at that note until the sun went down. Anger, disbelief, grief, it all swirled inside me like a storm. For a moment, I thought maybe they'd finally won. Maybe I was still the same kid who always let them take control. That night, I slept in my car, parked near the dunes. The roar of the ocean was loud in the darkness, but it couldn't drown out the humiliation. I had been locked out of the one place where I felt chosen. But as I lay staring at the roof of my car, something hardened inside me. My parents had always used pressure and guilt to make me fold. But this time, it felt different. They hadn't just pushed. They had crossed a line I couldn't forgive. The next morning, I dialed Ms. Turner, Uncle Rob's lawyer. Her voice was calm, steady, the kind of tone that could cut through panic. "Ethan," she said, "they changed the locks, didn't they?" "Yes," I whispered. "That's illegal," she replied simply. The words sank into me like sunlight after a storm. Illegal. For the first time since this all began, someone wasn't just sympathetic. They were on my side, with proof. Turner reminded me of the trust we had filed weeks earlier. The property wasn't even in my personal name anymore. It belonged to the trust, with her as trustee. My parents could host buyers, parade strangers through the living room, even swap locks. But legally, they had nothing. They were standing on sand, and they didn't even know it. I exhaled for the first time in days. "Then what do we do?" I asked. She chuckled softly. "We let them keep digging their own hole. And when the time comes, we'll be ready." Her confidence steadied me. That night, I drove back to the beach house. I couldn't get inside, but I parked nearby and sat on the sand. The silhouette of the house stood against the setting sun, beautiful and stubborn, like it was daring me not to give up. And I made a promise, to Uncle Rob, to myself, that I wasn't letting them take it. The next weeks were brutal. My parents called constantly, leaving voicemails dripping with condescension. "Honey, the movers are booked for Friday. Just pack your essentials. Ethan, you'll feel so much lighter once this is behind you." Every message was a knife disguised as kindness. My brother even chimed in, pretending to help. "You know, if you're overwhelmed, I can take the house off your hands. I'll even let you stay in the guest room." I laughed bitterly. He said it like he was doing me a favor. The same brother they had bailed out of failure after failure. The favoritism was sickening. But instead of arguing, I went quiet. That silence confused them more than shouting ever could. They expected me to break down, to beg, to give in. Instead, I started building. I picked up a job at a local property management company. At first, it was simple tasks, organizing files, answering phones. But I paid attention. I learned how rental contracts worked, how taxes were filed, how maintenance was handled. Every day, I absorbed knowledge like a sponge. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was literally learning how to manage houses, the exact thing my parents said I couldn't do. And I was good at it. My boss started trusting me with small properties. Tenants called me for repairs, for payments, for decisions. And I handled it all. The responsibility felt like oxygen after years of being smothered. With each paycheck, I put money into a secret account. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And every evening, I drove back to the beach, parking near the house. Even if I couldn't sit on the porch yet, just watching the waves reminded me what I was fighting for. Meanwhile, the community wasn't blind. Uncle Rob had been beloved in town. When people heard my parents were trying to push me out, whispers spread. Mrs. Whitaker, the neighbor across the street, walked over one evening with a tin of cookies. She pressed them into my hands and said, "Your uncle was proud of you. Don't let them take that from you." Her words pierced me deeper than she realized. This wasn't just about property. It was about becoming the man Uncle Rob believed I could be. Over the next month, my footing grew stronger. At work, my role expanded. At home, or what was supposed to be my home, I stayed patient. Because every time my parents paraded buyers through the house, they only tied the noose tighter around themselves. Then came the lowest blow. One night, a neighbor texted me, "They're hosting another showing." I drove past slowly. Their car was out front. Strangers were stepping onto the porch, clipboards in hand. Through the window, I saw my mom gesturing proudly around the living room, like she was the rightful owner. My chest burned. But I didn't storm in. I didn't scream. Instead, I drove away and parked at a cafe downtown. I opened my laptop, stared at the trust papers MS. Turner had emailed me, and smiled. Let them dig. The deeper they went, the harder the fall would be. And for the first time, I wasn't the one scrambling. I was waiting. Planning. Becoming someone new. Someone stronger. Someone they didn't recognize anymore. Because they thought they had locked me out. But really, they had only locked themselves in. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. It was MS. Turner. Her voice was calm, but there was a spark of satisfaction in it. "Ethan," she said, "your parents scheduled a final sale meeting for next week." My heart skipped. This was it. The buyers will be there. The realtor too. And so will we, she added. For the first time in months, I didn't feel dread. I felt ready. The week leading up to that meeting stretched like an eternity. But unlike before, I wasn't panicking. I was preparing. Every evening after work, I sat with MS. Turner in her office. We reviewed the trust documents line by line. The papers were airtight. The house was legally untouchable. No forged signature, no backroom deal, no smug smile could change that. Uncle Rob had built me a fortress long before I knew I needed one. And now it was time to use it. The morning of the meeting, I woke before dawn. I dressed simply, a clean shirt, pressed slacks. Not to impress. Just to look like someone who belonged at the table. When I arrived at the county office, my parents were already inside. They sat across from a realtor and two buyers. My mom's smile was bright and smug. My dad leaned back like a king surveying his domain. When they saw me, my dad smirked. "Glad you could make it," he said. "We're finalizing everything today. You'll sign, collect your share, and this nonsense will be over." I sat down slowly. I set the folder of documents on the table. Turner sat beside me, calm and composed. Her presence alone made my mom's smile falter. The realtor cleared her throat nervously. "Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell assured us everything is ready. Just a few signatures, and we can close today." "That's not true, MS. Turner said smoothly. The room froze. My dad stiffened. "What do you mean?" he snapped. "You filed a transfer, MS. Turner continued, "But you filed it fraudulently. The property isn't yours to sell. It never was." She opened the folder and laid the trust papers neatly on the table. The buyers leaned forward, curiosity sharpening in their eyes. "The beach house was placed into an irrevocable trust weeks ago," she explained. "As trustee, I confirm that Ethan Caldwell is the sole beneficiary." No outside party has any right to sell, transfer, or alter ownership. The words sliced through the room like a blade. My parents' faces drained of color. My mom blinked rapidly, her lips parting. My dad leaned forward, grabbing at the papers, but Ms. Turner slid them out of reach. "This is ridiculous," he barked. "We talked to the clerk. We filed the paperwork. Forgery is a felony, Mr. Caldwell, Ms. Turner replied calmly. "And you'll find that whatever you submitted has no legal standing." The buyers looked at each other uneasily. "So this sale isn't valid?" one of them asked. "Correct, Ms. Turner said. "There is no sale. There never was." Silence fell. I finally spoke. "You tried to lock me out. You told me I was out by Friday. You paraded strangers through the house as if I was a squatter." My voice shook slightly, but it grew steadier with each word. "You thought I'd roll over. Like I always did." I looked them in the eye. "But Uncle Rob didn't choose you. He chose me. Because he knew I'd protect it." My mom's voice cracked. "Ethan, you don't understand, we were just trying to help. You always ruin things." The same line they had used my entire life. But this time, it didn't sting. It sounded small. Weak. Almost pathetic. I leaned back and said quietly, "We'll see who ruined what." The buyers stood, embarrassed, and excused themselves. The realtor followed, her face flushed. And then it was just us. The four of us. And the truth laid bare on the table. My dad slammed his fist down. "You think you've won? You're nothing without us." I didn't flinch. For once, their anger had no power over me. Turner closed the folder with a snap. "My advice to you both," she said, "is to walk away before this escalates further. Because right now, you're exposed." Her words landed heavy in the silence. My mom's face twisted, torn between rage and shame. My dad's jaw clenched, his voice low and venomous. "You'll regret this, Ethan." I stood. "No," I said. "I regret letting you treat me like less for so many years. But not anymore." I gathered the papers, tucked them into the folder, and walked out. The sun outside was blinding. And for the first time, I felt like I could breathe. The fallout came quickly. Word spread through the community about what they tried to do. Neighbors whispered. Family friends pulled away. My dad's reputation at work took a hit. My mom, queen of social appearances, found herself uninvited from gatherings. They tried calling me. First angry. Then guilty. Then silent. I never answered. Instead, I focused on the life I was finally building. I worked harder at my job. My boss gave me more responsibility. I saved more. I painted the deck. Planted flowers by the front steps. Hung Uncle Rob's surfboard back on the wall. Every evening, I sat there as the sun set, feeling like I was no longer a shadow in my own story. I was the author now. But here's the part you might not expect. One night, months later, I got a letter. From my mom. Her handwriting was shaky, almost unfamiliar. She apologized. Not perfectly. Not fully. But it was something. She said she missed me. She said they had been wrong. She asked if someday, maybe, we could talk. For a long time, I stared at that letter. Old anger rose up. But underneath, something softer stirred. I realized something important. Winning the house wasn't the real victory. Walking away stronger, that was the victory. And forgiveness? That was freedom. Not for them. For me. Because carrying bitterness was just another way of letting them control me. So I wrote back. Short. Simple. I'm doing well. The house is safe. Thank you for reaching out. Maybe we can talk someday. I didn't promise more. I didn't invite them back into my life. But I left the door cracked open. Because Uncle Rob once told me, the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's living in peace. And sitting on that porch, watching the waves crash, I finally understood what he meant. The house was mine. My life was mine. And my parents? They were just people I could choose to forgive. Or not. Either way, they didn't own me anymore. And for the first time, that was enough.